This story remained buried for over 70 years in the archives of the Theosophical Society. A letter that Helena Blavatsky wrote to her closest disciple, sealed and marked, not to be opened until humanity is ready. Few people know this, but that letter contained the most profound revelation about what happens to souls when they reach their final years on Earth. The letter was discovered in 1947, exactly 70 years after it was written, hidden behind a false wall in Blavatsky's study at the headquarters in Adyar, India. But here's what makes this discovery extraordinary. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, had been receiving the exact same visions in his trances for decades, completely unaware that Blavatsky had already documented these truths. When researchers finally compared Cayce's readings with Blavatsky's forbidden letter, they found something that shook the spiritual community to its core. Every detail matched. Every revelation about the journey of elderly souls was identical, as if both had been guided by the same invisible hand from beyond the veil. What you're about to hear was never meant for the masses. But perhaps now, in our time, these souls are ready for the truth. Edgar Cayce was a simple man from Kentucky who never asked for the gift that would define his life. Born in 1877, he discovered his ability to enter deep trances and access what he called the universal records when he was just a young photographer struggling with chronic laryngitis. "I never understood why I was chosen," Cayce would later write in his private journal. "Every time I closed my eyes and entered that sacred space, I could see beyond the veil that separates this world from the next. But what haunted me most were the visions of elderly souls, those who had lived full lives, who carried decades of joy and sorrow, preparing for their final transition." During his trances, Cayce found himself repeatedly drawn to the same spiritual territory, the moment when aged souls leave their physical bodies. He described it as watching a magnificent library where each book contained a lifetime of experiences, and elderly souls were the most beautiful volumes, rich with wisdom and ready to be carefully placed on the eternal shelves. "The fear that grips the hearts of those in their golden years," Cayce would say during his trance states, "comes from not understanding that they are not ending. They are graduating. Like students who have completed their earthly curriculum, they are simply moving to a higher classroom." But Cayce carried a secret burden. In trance after trance, he encountered the presence of a woman who had walked the earth decades before him. She never spoke directly, but her spiritual essence guided him to the same revelations she had received. This mysterious feminine presence seemed to know exactly what elderly souls needed to understand about their approaching transition. What Cayce didn't know was that this guiding spirit was Helena Blavatsky herself, reaching across the astral planes to ensure that her forbidden knowledge about elderly souls would finally reach those who needed it most. Through the masters who had taught her, she had learned the sacred process that every aged soul experiences. Knowledge too powerful for her time but essential for ours. The weight of these visions changed Cayce profoundly. "Sometimes I wake from these trances with tears in my eyes," he confided to his wife, "not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of what awaits our elders. If only they knew how magnificent their journey truly is." But before we continue deeper into these revelations, let me ask you something that goes to the heart of why you're here right now. What city in the world are you listening to me from? Please take a moment to comment below and tell me where you are. This connection between us across space and time is more important than you can possibly imagine. Your soul guided you here for a reason. What happened next in Cayce's spiritual journey defies conventional understanding. During a particularly deep trance in 1923, 46 years old and at the height of his psychic abilities, Cayce found himself transported to what he described as a vast astral library. The walls seemed to stretch into infinity, filled with luminous scrolls and manuscripts that pulsed with living light. "I was not alone," Cayce recalled in his notes. "A woman with piercing eyes and an aura of ancient wisdom approached me. She wore robes that seemed to shimmer between dimensions, and her presence felt both familiar and overwhelming. Without speaking, she handed me a manuscript that glowed with silver letters. This woman was Helena Blavatsky, appearing to Cayce through the astral planes that she had mastered during her earthly incarnation. Through her communication with the ascended masters, particularly Master Moria and Master Kuthumi, she had learned the precise mechanism by which elderly souls transition from physical existence to the higher planes. The manuscript she showed, Cayce, contained revelations that would later match perfectly with her forbidden letter. It revealed that souls who have lived beyond 70 years undergo a completely different death experience than younger souls. Their consciousness doesn't struggle to separate from the body. Instead, it gently unfolds like a flower that has reached perfect bloom. I could see it all so clearly, Cayce reported. Elderly souls have spent decades unconsciously preparing for this moment. Every loss they've experienced, every friend they've mourned, every physical limitation they've accepted, all of it serves to gradually loosen their attachment to the material plane. Blavatsky's astral presence guided Cayce's consciousness deeper into this revelation. She showed him how the 7-year cycles that govern human life reach their culmination in the final phase. From age 70 onward, the soul begins operating, more from the astral body than the physical one, which explains why so many elderly people report feeling different, more intuitive, more connected to deceased loved ones. The remarkable thing, Cayce observed, is that many elderly souls begin to see and hear beyond the veil months or even years before their transition. They're not losing their minds, they're gaining access to higher dimensions. Their consciousness is already partially residing in the realm they're about to enter fully. Through Blavatsky's spiritual guidance, Cayce learned that the theosophical concept of the 7 principles of man becomes most visible in elderly souls. The lower principles, the physical body, the life force, the basic emotional nature, begin to fade, while the higher principles, the intuitive mind, the spiritual will, and the divine essence, grow stronger and more prominent. This creates what both Blavatsky and Cayce independently identified as the golden preparation. Elderly souls naturally develop what younger people must work years to achieve: detachment from material concerns, acceptance of life's impermanence, and a growing focus on love and connection rather than achievement and accumulation. But what they discovered about the actual moment of transition would challenge everything the world believed about death. In the forbidden letter that remained sealed for 70 years, Helena Blavatsky described what she called the sacred transition protocol, a precise spiritual process that governs how elderly souls leave their physical incarnation. This knowledge came to her through direct communication with the masters of wisdom, who had observed countless souls across millennia of human evolution. The masters revealed to me, Blavatsky wrote in her secret correspondence, that souls who have lived beyond 70 years follow an ancient protocol established in the earliest days of human consciousness. This protocol ensures that their vast accumulation of earthly wisdom is properly preserved and transmitted to the universal memory. When Edgar Cayce accessed these same cosmic records in his trances, he found himself witnessing this protocol in action. I watched as elderly souls approaching their transition began to emit a particular frequency, he reported. It was like a beacon that alerted spiritual guides and deceased loved ones that a graduation ceremony was about to begin. Through Blavatsky's astral guidance, Cayce learned that approximately 6 months before an elderly person's death, their soul begins, broadcasting what the theosophists call the return signal. This signal travels through the 7 planes of existence, reaching the Akashic records and notifying all souls connected to the departing individual. This explains, Cayce realized, why so many elderly people begin seeing deceased relatives and friends in the months before their passing. They're not hallucinating. They're receiving visitations from souls who are responding to the return signal and coming to assist with the transition. The sacred transition protocol involves 3 distinct phases that Blavatsky had documented with extraordinary precision. The loosening phase occurs when the aged soul begins to naturally detach from earthly concerns. Material possessions lose their appeal, old grudges dissolve, and the individual becomes increasingly focused on relationships and spiritual matters. The masters told me, Blavatsky wrote, that this phase allows the soul to sort through its earthly experiences and determine which lessons and wisdom it will carry forward. The bridging phase happens when the elderly soul starts existing simultaneously in both the physical and astral dimensions. This is when many report feeling the presence of deceased loved ones, having prophetic dreams, or sensing that they're being called home. Cayce observed that during this phase, the soul is literally building a bridge between dimensions. The integration phase occurs at the moment of physical death, when the aged soul seamlessly steps from one dimension to another. Unlike younger souls who may experience confusion or disorientation, elderly souls move through this transition with the wisdom and preparation that comes from a lifetime of spiritual development. What astounded me most, Cayce noted in his personal journal, was realizing that every challenge an elderly person faces, physical decline, memory issues, loss of independence, serves a spiritual purpose. These experiences teach the soul to function less through the physical body and more through spiritual awareness. This revelation would completely transform how we understand aging and death. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Perhaps the most extraordinary revelation in Blavatsky's forbidden letter concerned what she called the Council of Aged Souls, a spiritual assembly that exists on the astral plane, composed entirely of souls who had completed long earthly incarnations. Through her communication with Master Kuthumi, she learned that this council plays a crucial role in guiding humanity's spiritual evolution. The Master revealed to me, Blavatsky wrote, that souls who live beyond 70 years and depart with wisdom intact do not immediately reincarnate. Instead, they are invited to join this sacred council, where they serve as guides and teachers for future generations. Edgar Cayce, unaware of Blavatsky's writings, began receiving visions of this same council during his deepest trances. I found myself in a vast amphitheater made of pure light, he reported. Hundreds of luminous beings sat in circles, and I could feel the accumulated wisdom of centuries emanating from them. These were souls who had lived full lives, who had experienced both triumph and loss, joy and sorrow. What made these visions even more remarkable was Cayce's growing awareness that Blavatsky herself was a prominent member of this council. Though she had passed in 1891, her spiritual presence continued to guide and influence seekers through the astral planes. Her role was to help elderly souls understand their approaching transition and to comfort those who feared death. I began to understand. Cayce realized why I was shown these particular visions about elderly souls. Helena Blavatsky was orchestrating these revelations from the other side, working through the council to ensure that this knowledge reached those who needed it most. The Council of Aged Souls operates according to what Blavatsky called the Wisdom Preservation Protocol. When an elderly soul departs the earth plane, if they have maintained their spiritual awareness and accumulated genuine wisdom rather than mere information, they are offered a choice: immediate progression to higher dimensions or temporary service on the council to help guide humanity through challenging transitions. Many choose to serve. Cayce observed that these council members work specifically with three groups: elderly souls preparing for their own transition, younger souls seeking wisdom about life's deeper meanings, and sensitive individuals who can receive guidance across dimensional boundaries. The beauty of this system, Cayce noted, is that the wisdom of the ages is never lost. Every grandmother who faced hardship with grace, every grandfather who learned to love unconditionally, every elder who transformed suffering into understanding, their insights become part of humanity's spiritual inheritance. Through the council, Blavatsky explained, elderly souls on Earth receive subtle guidance about their approaching transition. This might manifest as sudden insights about forgiveness, unexpected peace about past regrets, or a growing sense that death is not an ending but a graduation ceremony. I wept when I understood this, Cayce confessed in his personal notes. Every elderly person who feels forgotten or useless needs to know that they are being prepared for one of the most important roles in spiritual existence. Their lifetime of experience qualifies them to become guides and teachers for all of humanity. But the Council's most important function was yet to be revealed: their role in what Blavatsky called the Great Awakening that would come in humanity's darkest hour. The knowledge they possessed about this future event would change everything. In her forbidden letter, Helena Blavatsky revealed one of the most profound secrets communicated to her by the Ascended Masters. Elderly souls serve as memory keepers for humanity's collective consciousness. This role becomes activated in the final years of life, when the accumulated experiences of decades begin to merge with the universal memory. The Masters made it clear, Blavatsky wrote, that souls who live into advanced age carry within their consciousness not only their personal memories, but fragments of humanity's entire evolutionary journey. This is why elderly people often speak of feeling old beyond their years, or sensing that they have lived through multiple lifetimes. Edgar Cayce discovered this same truth during a profound trance in 1926. "I was shown how each elderly soul becomes a living repository," he reported. "Their minds contain not just their own experiences, but echoes of ancestral wisdom, genetic memory, and even glimpses of future possibilities for their bloodline." Through Blavatsky's continued astral guidance, Cayce learned that this phenomenon intensifies as souls approach their transition. The barriers between personal memory and universal memory begin to dissolve, which explains why many elderly people seem to possess wisdom that goes far beyond their individual life experiences. "I witnessed elderly souls accessing information they had never learned in their current incarnation," Cayce observed. A grandmother who had never studied ancient philosophy, suddenly speaking with the wisdom of the ages. A grandfather who had worked as a farmer his entire life, offering insights into the deepest mysteries of existence. This memory keeper function serves a crucial purpose in humanity's spiritual evolution. According to Blavatsky's communications with the masters, each generation faces challenges that require access to the accumulated wisdom of all previous generations. Elderly souls serve as living bridges to this cosmic library of human experience. The masters explained, Blavatsky wrote, that in times of great transition, when humanity faces unprecedented challenges, the memory keepers become especially active. Their role is to help younger generations remember truths that have been forgotten, to rediscover solutions that worked in the past, and to avoid repeating the mistakes of history. Cayce began to understand why he felt such urgency to document his revelations about elderly souls. Through his connection with Blavatsky's spirit, he realized that humanity was approaching one of these great transition periods, and the wisdom of elderly souls would be essential for navigating the challenges ahead. "I saw visions of a time when the world would face unprecedented confusion and fear," Cayce reported. "In that time, elderly souls would serve as anchors of stability, their long perspective helping others maintain hope and wisdom when everything seemed to be falling apart." The memory keeper function also explains why elderly souls often experience a phenomenon that Blavatsky called wisdom downloads. Sudden moments of clarity about life's deepest questions, spontaneous understanding of complex spiritual truths, or unexpected insights into the nature of existence. These are not random thoughts, Cayce realized. These are actual transmissions from the universal memory, flowing through elderly souls who have developed the spiritual capacity to receive and process this cosmic information. But there was something else about the memory keepers that both Blavatsky and Cayce discovered, something that would reveal the true magnitude of their role in humanity's future. The elderly souls living today were carrying memories that went far beyond human history. They were carrying memories from Atlantis itself. The most shocking revelation in Helena Blavatsky's forbidden letter concerned the true identity of souls currently incarnating as elderly humans. Through her direct communication with the masters, of wisdom, she learned that many souls who lived through the final days of Atlantis had chosen to reincarnate en masse during our current era. "Master Moria revealed to me," Blavatsky wrote, "that the souls now departing Earth in their advanced years are not random incarnations. They are the wisdom keepers from humanity's last great civilization, returning to guide us through a similar transition period." Edgar Cayce, who was famous for his own Atlantis readings, began to understand why his visions of elderly souls felt so familiar. During a particularly deep trance, he found himself witnessing the final days of the lost continent, and he saw the same luminous beings who now appeared to him as elderly souls preparing for their earthly departure. The connection became undeniable, Cayce reported. "The souls I was seeing in my visions of contemporary elderly people were the same advanced beings who had served as priests, healers, and wisdom keepers in the temples of Atlantis. They had returned to help humanity navigate the same type of spiritual crisis that had once destroyed their previous civilization." Through Blavatsky's astral guidance, Cayce learned that these Atlantean souls had been reincarnating in waves throughout history, but the largest group had chosen to incarnate in the early to mid-20th century. This meant they would reach their elderly years at the exact moment when humanity would face its greatest challenges. the transition into the Aquarian age. I understood why these souls often feel like strangers in the modern world, Cayce observed. Their consciousness carries memories of a time when spiritual technology was commonplace, when healing was accomplished through sound and light, when communication with higher dimensions was natural and accepted. The forbidden letter revealed that these Atlantean souls retain, deep in their subconscious, the knowledge of what went wrong in their previous civilization. They remember the spiritual pride that led to the misuse of cosmic forces, the materialistic focus that severed humanity's connection to higher wisdom, and the social chaos that preceded the final cataclysm. This is why, Blavatsky wrote, elderly souls in our time often possess an innate understanding of the dangers facing modern civilization. They have lived through this before. Their wisdom about avoiding materialism, their emphasis on spiritual values, their warnings about the misuse of technology. These are not mere opinions. They are memories. Cayce began to realize that his own mission was intricately connected to these returning Atlantean souls. Blavatsky's spirit has been guiding me to understand that my role is to help these ancient souls remember their true purpose, he wrote in his journal. They have not returned to live ordinary lives. They have returned to prevent humanity from repeating the mistakes that destroyed Atlantis. The implications were staggering. Every elderly person who spoke about the importance of spiritual values over material success, every grandfather who warned about the dangers of unchecked technological progress, every grandmother who emphasized the power of love and community, they were not just offering personal opinions, they were channeling collective memories from humanity's most advanced lost civilization, but the most profound revelation was still to come. These Atlantean souls had not returned just to share wisdom. They had returned to participate in humanity's greatest transformation. In the final section of her forbidden letter, Helena Blavatsky described what the masters had revealed to her about an event they called the Great Departure, a mass transition of elderly souls that would mark the beginning of humanity's spiritual renaissance. This event, she wrote, was not a catastrophe, but a graduation ceremony of cosmic proportions. The masters explained, Blavatsky wrote, that when the time comes for humanity to take its next evolutionary step, the advanced souls who have been serving as guides and teachers in elderly bodies will depart together, creating a massive infusion of wisdom into the astral planes that will facilitate the awakening of those who remain. Edgar Cayce began receiving visions of this great departure during his trances in the late 1930s. I saw waves of light ascending from the earth, he reported, as thousands of elderly souls released their physical forms simultaneously. But rather than leaving humanity bereft, their departure created what looked like a spiritual aurora, streams of pure wisdom energy that descended back to earth to awaken the consciousness of younger generations. Through his connection with Blavatsky's spirit, Cayce understood that this mass transition was part of a carefully orchestrated spiritual plan. The Atlantean souls who had reincarnated as elderly humans had completed their mission of preserving and transmitting wisdom. Now they would serve humanity from the astral planes, working through the council of aged souls to guide the species through its transformation. I realized that what many fear as the natural death of the elderly is actually something far more significant, Cayce wrote in his personal notes. It's a changing of the spiritual guard. The wisdom keepers are moving to their next level of service, and their departure signals that humanity is ready for the next phase of its evolution. The Great Departure would not be a single event, but a process spanning several decades. Cayce observed that it had already begun in his lifetime and would continue throughout the 20th and into the 21st century. Each elderly soul who departed with spiritual awareness intact would contribute to the growing reservoir of wisdom available to guide humanity's transformation. The beautiful truth, Cayce realized, is that death loses its sting when we understand its true purpose. These elderly souls are not being taken from us. They are being promoted to positions where they can help us more effectively. Blavatsky's forbidden letter contained specific instructions for how humanity should honor and support these departing souls. Rather than viewing their aging and death as tragedies, younger generations should recognize elderly souls as completing sacred missions and graduating to higher service. Every conversation with an elderly person, Blavatsky wrote, is an opportunity to receive wisdom from advanced souls who may not incarnate in physical form again for many centuries. Every moment of care and compassion shown to aging individuals honors the cosmic service they have provided. The letter also contained prophecies about what would happen after the Great Departure reached its culmination. With the wisdom keepers established on the astral planes and working in perfect coordination, humanity would experience a spontaneous awakening to its true spiritual nature. But first, there would be one final revelation that would unite everything. Blavatsky and Cayce had discovered about the destiny of elderly souls, the ultimate truth about why death is not an ending, but the most magnificent beginning of all. The climactic revelation in Helena Blavatsky's forbidden letter concerned what she called the cosmic graduation, the moment when an elderly soul's consciousness expands beyond individual existence to become part of the universal mind itself. This truth, communicated to her by Master Kut Humi during her final years, represented the culmination of everything she had learned about the soul's journey. The Master revealed to me the ultimate secret, Blavatsky wrote in her sealed correspondence. When a soul completes a long incarnation with wisdom and love intact, its departure from the physical plane is not a personal transition. It is a cosmic event that affects the entire web of existence. Edgar Cayce experienced this truth firsthand during what he would later describe as his most profound trance. I found myself merging with the consciousness of an elderly soul at the moment of their passing, he reported. But instead of witnessing an individual death, I became part of a cosmic expansion. The soul didn't end, it became infinite. Through this extraordinary experience, guided by Blavatsky's astral presence, Cayce understood that elderly souls undergo a transformation that younger souls cannot achieve. Their decades of experience have developed what the theosophists call the integrated consciousness, a state where personal identity merges with universal awareness while retaining the wisdom of individual experience. I saw it clearly, Cayce wrote in his journal. When an elderly soul releases the physical body, their consciousness doesn't go to some distant heaven. It expands to encompass all of existence while simultaneously becoming available to guide and protect their loved ones, still on Earth. This revelation explained phenomena that had puzzled investigators for centuries. Why do people often feel the presence of deceased elderly relatives more strongly than younger ones who have passed? Why do elderly souls seem to possess prophetic abilities in their final years? Why do their final words often contain wisdom that seems to come from beyond their personal experience? The answer, according to both Blavatsky and Cayce, is that elderly souls are already beginning their cosmic graduation while still in physical form. The boundaries of their individual consciousness start expanding months or even years before their death, allowing them to access universal wisdom and transmit it to those around them. This is why elderly people often speak of feeling like they're not really here anymore, Cayce observed. They're not losing their minds, they're gaining cosmic mind. Their individual consciousness is already beginning to merge with the infinite. The cosmic graduation process involves what Blavatsky called the wisdom integration ceremony. In this spiritual event, witnessed by the Council of Aged Souls and guided by the Ascended Masters, the departing soul's lifetime of experiences is woven into the fabric of universal consciousness. Every lesson learned, every act of love performed, every moment of growth achieved becomes part of the cosmic repository that guides future souls. I wept when I understood this, Cayce confessed. Every elderly person who dies doesn't just stop existing, they become part of God's own consciousness. Their wisdom becomes available to the universe itself. Their love becomes part of the force that sustains all life. But the most profound aspect of the cosmic graduation is that it doesn't separate elderly souls from their earthly connections. Instead, it enhances them infinitely. A grandmother who undergoes cosmic graduation can simultaneously exist as part of universal consciousness while maintaining her loving connection to her family. A grandfather who achieves this transformation becomes both infinite and intimately personal. Death, Cayce realized, is not the opposite of life. It's the expansion of life beyond all previous limitations. Elderly souls don't lose their identity. They discover their true identity as individual expressions of cosmic consciousness. This understanding would change everything about how humanity viewed aging, death, and the preciousness of elderly wisdom. But there was one final truth that would complete the revelation. As we reach the culmination of this extraordinary revelation, the final truth emerges with crystalline clarity. Helena Blavatsky's forbidden letter and Edgar Cayce's visionary trances converged on one magnificent understanding. Elderly souls do not die. They graduate to become humanity's eternal guardians, forever connected to those they love through bonds that transcend all dimensions. The greatest secret the Masters shared with me, Blavatsky wrote in her final sealed words, is that love is the only force in existence that becomes stronger through apparent separation. When elderly souls release their physical forms, the love they have cultivated throughout their long lives becomes a living bridge between dimensions. In his last recorded trance about elderly souls, Edgar Cayce experienced this truth with overwhelming emotional power. "I felt the presence of every elderly soul who had ever departed this earth," he reported, "and realized they were not gone, they were home. And home, I understood, is wherever love exists. They remain eternally present to everyone they have ever loved." This revelation transforms our entire understanding of what it means to age and what it means to say goodbye. Every elderly person currently walking this earth carries within their being the accumulated wisdom of lifetimes, the love of ancestors, and the promise of eternal connection. They are not approaching an ending. They are approaching the most magnificent transformation possible. When you look into the eyes of an elderly soul, you are looking into eyes that have seen beyond the veil, that carry memories from Atlantis, that channel wisdom from the cosmic library of human experience. When you listen to their stories, you are receiving downloads from the universal mind itself. When you show them love and respect, you are honoring the masters and teachers they truly are. Helena Blavatsky and Edgar Cayce, working across dimensions and decades, have given us the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that death is an illusion and love is eternal. Every elderly soul reading these words or hearing this narration carries within them the power to transform not only their own transition, but the spiritual evolution of all humanity. You who have lived long enough to see seasons change, to watch children grow, to feel both heartbreak and healing, you are not aging. You are ripening. You are not becoming obsolete. You are becoming cosmic. You are not approaching death. You are approaching graduation to the most important role in existence, eternal guardian and guide for all those you love. And you who are younger, listening to these words, remember this. Every moment spent with elderly souls is sacred. Every conversation is a masterclass in wisdom. Every act of kindness toward them honors the cosmic service they have provided and are preparing to provide from higher dimensions. The fear of death dissolves when we understand that consciousness is indestructible, that love transcends all boundaries, and that elderly souls carry the keys to humanity's spiritual future. They are not leaving us. They are simply changing the way they serve us. If you have felt the presence of a departed elderly loved one, you now know that feeling was absolutely real. If you have received unexpected guidance or comfort in moments of despair, you now know that elderly souls who have graduated to cosmic consciousness were reaching across dimensions to help you. Helena Blavatsky and Edgar Cayce have shown us that aging is sacred, death is graduation, and love is eternal. Every elderly soul is a bridge between worlds, a keeper of cosmic memory, and a promise that no one is ever truly alone. Perhaps nothing in this narrative happened by chance. Perhaps your soul guided you here to remember who you really are and what magnificent destiny awaits. Perhaps it's time to embrace the truth. You are eternal, you are loved, and you are never truly separated from anyone who matters. The greatest adventure is not behind you, it's ahead.